are used interchangeably. They are not the same. Climate is a shift, while global warming can become climate change and also causes variables to change. Good. Very curious. 3 minutes more, and we have And if your colleagues are having issues with joining the meeting, please remind them that they should check the confirmation email they received yesterday. And Mr. Lucas sent another reminder this morning, so please check your email inbox to join. Thank you. You can't see your responses. Oh. Okay, so we have a minute to go, and then we hand over to Professor Kluchi. Let me read the last one. I also learned that albedo is the reflective ability of the earth. The clouds, desert, and snow all reflect the incoming solar radiation. We have some climate experts on board. Yeah, so worlds. It's exactly 10:20 a.m. I will hand over to Professor Kluchi to take over from here. Hello, Prof.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing quite fine.
Okay.
So did you see the responses from your students?
Yes.
Is it encouraging?
It means they're paying attention, so it's good.
Okay. All right, you can take over from here.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, I share my
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so
Good morning again.
today, good morning, Jerry. So today we're going to focus on mitigation. So you can see my screen. I put it on full screen. Can you see it at full screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
So
Yes,
today we're going to
please.
focus on mitigation, so climate change and mitigation. If you recall from yesterday's class, I'd mentioned, you have seen this, recording of the rising temperature. This is what we want to stop or slow down or reduce the rate at which this rising temperature is occurring, what we call the global warming. So we have actually come to terms with the fact that the global temperatures are rising, or the world is warmer than it used to be. And it keeps warming. The rate at which it's warming is unprecedented. And so with higher temperatures, we get other variables in the atmosphere or the climate system also getting affected. And the reason we have climate change is because we're having the warming or the impact that it's difficult for us to adapt to now is because we are having very fast warming of the earth. So in trying to reduce this rate of warming is the reason we're doing mitigation. So just to bring this to your attention, and you remember that we had correlated the carbon dioxide emission and other greenhouse gases emission to warming of the globe. So the rising temperatures, we have related it to carbon dioxide emission and other greenhouse gases like methane. So the IPCC SIT assessment report, which was released, that's the last assessment report 2 years ago, had red-coded global warming for humans, which means clearly from this picture, you see the rate at which carbon dioxide concentration is being added to the atmosphere because of our activities is too high and too fast. And so we have to do something about it. We have to cut down the addition of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So you can raise your hand to stop me if there's something you don't understand or you need clarification for. We need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And one key agenda is on Goal 13, climate action. Climate action, when we do it well, it affects every other goal. So Goal 1 is clear, no poverty. Climate change is causing poverty in the country. I won't go through all the 17, but you know it for yourself. Look at it and tell me which one doesn't have relationship with climate action. So Goal 13 affects every other goal on the Sustainable Development Goal. So achieving Goal 13, it means achieving most parts of the Sustainable Development Goal. So we need to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. You remember this slide from yesterday, that we are all responsible. So our motivation to be a part of the mitigation exercise is for the fact that we have all been part of contributing to climate change. We have all been part of the global warming we are talking about. So today's focus is on mitigation. So mitigate, to reduce greenhouse gas emission, to reduce climate change. Tomorrow we'll talk about adaptation, where we have to, it's part of the climate action. So these two, mitigation and adaptation, are the climate action we need to take and to be able to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Adapting to climate is to avoid or prepare for the consequences of the climate impact, the unavoidable situations we get due to climate change. We should still be able to survive, to live. And so we need to prepare adaptation actions and strategies, which we'll talk about that tomorrow. So for now on mitigation, we mentioned Paris Agreement, and the core element is on mitigation. Paris Agreement signed in 2015 is to reduce global warming. So the essence of mitigation, although started long ago, in 2015, the world came to an agreement that every country who is a member of the United Nations is going to play a role and make efforts to mitigate the global warming. So there are two key elements. One is the mitigation. So it's a global goal. Every country should make an effort. The second part of the mitigation is countries are writing and explaining their commitment to reducing the warming. So we have a document called Nationally Determined Contributions. So what is Ghana doing to reduce warming? What is Ghana doing in order not to add to the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? So every country documents what they're already contributing and how they will go about the mitigation plan, the mitigation actions in a document called the Nationally Determined Contribution. So every country who is a member of the United Nations are doing this work. Then the third component on the mitigation is leveling parties' obligation. So we have one country or party in UN, we call the countries parties. We support each other in different ways, which will come up in the course of the lecture. Then it's important to be transparent. So the UN has provided plan or guidance to how people can measure how much they add to the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and how much they can mitigate in that effort. So a transparency in the documentation, in the action. So the review of the implementation, review of the effectiveness of the implementation, review of the compliance. So there are so many documents countries provide to show their commitment to this agreement. What is mitigation? The action of reducing the severity, the seriousness, or painfulness of something. That's mitigation. But how can we mitigate climate change? We need to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that is released into the atmosphere. And there are so many ways we can do it. Let's imagine a world that is without mitigation. That is the last picture with a lot of red inside. So that is a warming, temperature rising to close to 11 degrees Celsius of a difference. So this is an anomaly plot. But when we do mitigation and it is substantial, we tend to get a good world, a world which is not too far from the average temperature of the world. So now we are warming, as you know it from yesterday. But then if we put in good enough efforts into mitigation action, we can live comfortably. And these plots are within our lifetime. So we want to reach to a world with substantial mitigation so that we don't have too much of warming. Still on the Paris Agreement, limiting temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius. So in our part of the world, we push for 1.5 degrees Celsius because already at the global average of 1.5 degrees Celsius, Africa is warmer by 2.4 degrees Celsius. So which means that as we talk about the global average of 1.5, Africa is much, much warmer than the global average itself. So at 2 degrees Celsius, Africa will be gone so much into warmth that we may not be able to contain it as humans, as plants, as our resources cannot be able to contain it. So as much as possible, we need to limit temperature reaching this level of warming. And so there are so many actions and all of that. And the last one you can read, delaying the mitigation effort will substantially increase the challenges associated with limiting the warming to 2 degrees Celsius. The picture you saw earlier on will be warmer than usual. There's a goal to mitigation. We need to support developing countries, especially and economics in transition, to achieve transformational change towards development with low carbon emission. So every action you take for development, everything you do, the goal is how will you do it so that you either add no emission or low carbon into the atmosphere. It's difficult to say no carbon emission, but whatever you do, we have to put on our mind that how do we do it so that whatever emission we put out there is very low or as low as possible. And it's also, the goal is also intended that recipient countries prepare for the new regime under the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that will seek commitment to emission reduction at a universal level. So there's 2 ways. I'll show you some pictures that shows how developed countries are contributing to the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Developed countries and developing countries rather serving as sinks, and there need to be the compensation scheme, which is discussed at the UN level. And we have various buffers or schemes that we will talk about in the course of time. And the objective first to promote innovation and technology transfer. So for example, like electric cars is a technology that helps with mitigation. How many countries are into that technology of producing electric cars? Maybe Ghana will want to go into the production of electric cars, but we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the innovation, we don't have the technological expertise to go into it. So Ghana can contract or go into agreement with, let's say, a country like China or Germany, which has the technology to partner and help to produce such, which means like we working together to reduce emission in that way. So there are different types of agreements in this way. Then countries are also to, with this mitigation effort and goal, to demonstrate systematic impact of mitigation options. So every action you take towards mitigation option, you should be able to show that this is how much that has impacted. So let's say Ghana stops the use of old cars or cars that uses so much fuel and are not fuel efficient. You have to show like this is how much it has helped in terms of mitigation action. Then the same objective to promote the enabling condition to involve considerations of climate change mitigation in national plans and development agendas. So everything we do in every country now, we should have the idea at the back of our minds that every action should be low carbon in perspective. So with mitigation in mind, then we move forward with every development that we do. In all of this, it's also important to know the sources of our emission so that the actions will be geared towards these sources. We get the whooping source of emissions from energy sector, the energy sector. And the energy sector goes about 35% of all the emissions from anthropogenic emissions. And so energy part is the primary. Energy for your food, for your car, energy for electricity, energy for everything that we use, that we power, whatever we power, takes or contributes to the emissions into the atmosphere of these greenhouse gases. And this is data as at 2010, so it could change in the current year. Agriculture, yesterday I had mentioned, and some people were asking about how the livestock and all of that contributes to the greenhouse gases. Today, in my slides now, I have shown some of the ways with a very nice animation, which you will see. So just an example with the livestock. So agriculture itself, the whole value chain of agriculture, forest, and then land use contribute to the second most highest emissions of greenhouse gases. Then the industry where people do production of clothes, cars, and all of that contributes like 21%. Transportation brings another contribution. Then the building sector, cement production, cutting of trees and all of that contribute to that, the downscale of the contribution of greenhouse gases. So you need to know the sources, and then when you are taking actions, you know where to target. So if you can realize there are more efforts towards energy, and I also mentioned a few towards energy, there are a few done on agriculture and then industry, but also more on transportation, where people are looking for efficient way of transportation. So on another source, so this is particularly for carbon dioxide, so not generally, this is particularly for carbon dioxide emission, and a few on methane and nitrous oxide. So fossil fuel provides, of course, as you remember, a lot more cement and flaring of gas. Like Ghana, we have the Ghana Gas Company Limited that has produced to us our LPG gas, produced for us some gases for plants of electricity, and they flare the rest. They just leave it in the air. So whatever they are not able to make use of in the country, they flare it. One of the ways we are looking at finding solution is how do we convert this gas that is flared by Ghana Gas to something else that is more usable than to flare it to add the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Then, of course, forestry and land use, I mentioned yesterday, also provide some source of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The methane, I want to just give a little bit more information into methane because we don't talk about it a lot more. We talk a lot about carbon dioxide than methane. So just to add or give you a little bit more on methane, so a bit more comprehensive here. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas with important implication for climate change. Methane, as it is non-toxic and creates no hazard when inhaled and in limited quantities. So it's odorless, it's colorless, tasteless gas, but then it's lighter than air. And it burns, it's inflammable. When you burn it, it has this blue flame. Or when you burn any fire and you see the blue flame, it means that methane is in there and it's getting out into the atmosphere. In oxygen, methane burns off and gives off carbon dioxide in water. I'd shown this equation yesterday of any type of fossil fuel with methane in there, or that group, methane, butane, pentane, and all of that. They burn in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide and water. So that's the structure of methane. Those who are interested in chemistry can know more. Now, methane, there are many sources that release methane. There are some that are natural and they still go into the atmosphere. There are also natural sinks. So as I said yesterday, the Earth as a natural system is able to get into a balance on its own. So it has its sources and has the sinks for greenhouse gases. So that's particularly for methane. And we have also the anthropogenic sources and anthropogenic sinks for methane. And there are also things, ways that we can destroy methane. Methane is for the source that is anthropogenic. We have rice production, we have landfills where we dump our waste, we have marshes, septic tank or septic system, sewages, other ruminant animals, energy generation, and also cattle rearing. And I will show you this animation. So when cattle feed, it goes through digestion, bacterial digestion and fermentation in the stomach, and then it gives off the methane. So some people, either it gives off methane from the anus or from the mouth, any of those. So some people wanted to know how it happens. So this an animation should help you understand it better. And I explained that the feed, if the feed is of a good quality, the methane that comes out from the cattle digestion or this digestion is much less than when the feed is not of a good quality. The methane is released in many countries, but then the topmost or country that release methane highest is China. The same way we have it on top with carbon dioxide. So USA and China, they always competing at the top. India follows, Russia follows, Brazil, Indonesia, and all of that. So which means that these countries actually rear cattle a lot more or produce rice a lot more. We also have within our region in Africa, methane emissions within the African continent. So Egypt is one of the highest producers or emitters of methane, followed by Nigeria, and goes all the way to DRC. See, you can't find Ghana. As we speak now, the greenhouse gas emissions growth between 2000 and 2010 has been larger than in the previous 3 decades. So you can see in circles, the way these lines are growing, it's indicated, so like plus 1.3% per year, plus 2.2% per year. So this has all the other gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous gas, and then the F gases. So carbon dioxide, both from land use and also from fossil fuel. You see the big yellow down is all from fossil fuel. The red is from land use. Then we have the light blue methane, nitrous oxide follow, and then the F gases follow. So these are all greenhouse gases that we currently have, and the rate at which, as I mentioned yesterday, these are being added into the atmosphere is unprecedented and causing the unprecedented warming that we are having. There's even more temptation because there's still more carbon in the ground than what we have already explored. So from gas, we have greenhouse gases already explored, and then there are a lot more still on the ground that we have not yet explored. So it can be recovered. Oil and coal. So you can see coal, there are a lot more. So there's temptation to explore more of these fossil fuel, but then we have to conserve energy, reduce wastage, so we have to mitigate in general. So here we have to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the air and then efficiently manage our waste, promote efficient energy, either at the industrial level, home level. Some places they have introduced taxes that help with the inefficient usage of energy and all of that. There are so many actions being taken, but still we are not there yet. Mitigation using renewable energy. We need to promote renewable energy sources such as wind and solar farms. We need to promote schemes, grants that help to install wind turbines, solar panels, and all of that. Some countries are doing it. Even Ghana, we have a few. And some countries have introduced carbon emission tax or fuel tax. We had an attempt in Ghana and it didn't work out. And I was happy that it didn't work out because Ghana is a sink, and in all, on the average, Ghana is a net sink to these greenhouse gases. So there's no point levying citizens on this emission levy that the government wanted to bring up. There was no point. We have countries that are the main contributors or source of greenhouse gases. They should introduce these taxes, but not countries or developing countries and countries from Africa. We are a sink. We can mitigate through carbon capture and afforestation. So we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the air and use methods for removing the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So there are natural methods like planting of trees for trees to come to take out the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. There's also, which I'll mention, technologies coming up to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we have a phrase called carbon sequestration. That is where you remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and then store it in plants and in soil or in other geological formations and also in the ocean. And it helps the plants and then it helps mitigate the atmosphere as well. We need to use more efficient energy, and we need to use as much as possible low carbon or no carbon energy. And there are a lot of emerging technologies that we can sign up to, we can promote, we can improve to use as people to reduce the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We need to also improve our carbon sinks. So sinks are what takes out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which means that we have to reduce deforestation. We have to stop cutting trees. We have to improve upon the forest management, plant more trees, protect our forests, and to help with the sinks. Of course, Ghana, we have the forests. Many African countries have the forest that takes out the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We can use bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. And we have to work on our lifestyle and behavioral changes. Yesterday, we had mentioned that in the talk. Ocean afforestation, there are some technologies that are helping grow and adding weeds in the oceans or water bodies. So seaweeds grow quickly and takes no space on the land, but then on the sea. Afforesting 9% of the ocean when we are able to use the seaweeds to sequester carbon dioxide from the ocean, because it's also stored in the ocean and eventually gets into the atmosphere. Yeah, so this is ocean afforestation, trying to grow weeds in the ocean. Then a mantra for you is a technology that you have to come up with under some of these areas: solar energy, wind energy, ocean energy, geothermal energy, biofuel, electric cars. I'd mentioned that our biggest source, our primary source of greenhouse gas emission is the energy sector. So people have come up with a biochar, for instance, and it's helping a lot to mitigate greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So there's so many benefits we are deriving from biochar, and we can never know what you can also come up with. So I put it to you as a challenge: come up with what we'll need to mitigate the climate system or mitigate the warming that we are currently in. So I give you an example of an action. So a country can come up with, or a group of countries can come up to say, we want to avoid 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year into the atmosphere. So they go like, so coal, we want to replace 300 conventional coal plants and change it to some other form of plant, so for zero emission. Carbon dioxide sequestration, we want to install about 1,000 of these as carbon dioxide sequestration plants. Wind, we want to install about 200 more wind generation plants. We want to do more PVC pipes, not PV, solar panels, and to install more of that. We want to go into nuclear energy to build more nuclear plants to help cut or let's say meet the demands on coal. So countries can come up with very specific objectives as to the number and activities that they want to do to be able to reach to these warming levels that we want to reduce. And it all brings the innovation which we need from you. Yesterday, you remember the slide where I said our option to stop global warming are here. We either stop using fossil fuel or we go more into some more ambitious use of other technologies, produce electricity from other sources, which I have explained, drive electric cars, fly solar-powered planes, stop the use of plastics. But then I told you also about the emerging technologies, removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, solar radiation modification, which I explained solar radiation modification, the reflection of this sunlight back into space so that it reduces the heat that we get from the sun. Now, this is one technology that is being used to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We call it the bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, the BECCS. So it's more natural than artificial. So people put this technology together to go through the plants. We know that plants take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to produce its food, and then go through the process of using the carbon dioxide or preserving it underground in geological reservoirs, and then use the same carbon dioxide as fuel and not allowing it to stay in the atmosphere. So there are so many processes and technologies that people are using and coming up with. The advantages and disadvantages of all these technologies that are now here. And most of them, we don't completely understand the effect it will have on the atmosphere, especially in the long term. And so there are ethical questions being asked and answers need to be provided through research and all of that. We have also direct carbon capture. So we have equipment installed to take out the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, intentionally take it out. And again, to store it in a geological reservoir or also use it as fuel. There are still so many ethical questions being asked. And again, more research needs to be done to provide answers to them. So again, I invite all of you to come into the space to produce or help as much as possible the innovation, the technology we need to limit the warming levels. There are potential advantages for the direct air capture of carbon. So we could capture and store a significant amount of carbon dioxide. What if we take a lot more than it's required to be removed? We don't know yet. So there are still questions that we're trying to answer, because the question is how much is enough? We don't know. And then there are so many other disadvantages to it. So I think that's the end. I'll end here. And if there are questions, I answer them.
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Oh,
Yes.
somebody has already raised hands, I see.
And there's a question in the Q&A session. Let me read that out by question. He's asking that, please, Prof, I want to ask, so who are the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change?
Who are the most vulnerable?
The impact of climate change.
The poor, the already vulnerables in the society. So women, children, people living with disabilities, and yeah, so mostly, so the poor, so you can even be a man, but if you are poor, it can be anyone who is not rich in quote to that level of being able to adapt. Women are naturally vulnerable. Children are naturally vulnerable, and people living with learning disabilities. These are vulnerable also to climate change.
Okay. So,
Any other?
Joshua, come here free to ask a question. Please ask your question.
Yeah, great, Prof. Thank you very much for the lecture. My question is on the mitigation part, where we're talking about the taxing, the issue of taxing. I wanted to ask that if companies are being taxed, or there's carbon emission tax or emission levy or whatever. All these things, there is no way that producers are going to factor these costs as their own. By all means, they are going to share the cost onto consumers. So if the burden is going to be on consumers, that means that it's like the consumers are going to be the one to pay more. So it's not really going to be on them. They are going to share that cost and then add it to the price of the product that they are selling. And then consumers are going to do that. So I wanted to have clarification on that. Or I wanted to know if there is no way producers are going to pay that kind of thing without pricing consumers.
I think the emission tax was not just for producers, it was for everybody who uses fuel. So once you are driving a car and you go there, you go to the gas station to fill your car, you pay it. So the more you use, the more you pay. But I do understand that it will be those who are producing, right? They will pay more. And of course, they will add to the cost to the client, the end user. So it eventually becomes higher on the user, on the ordinary citizen.
Okay, Prof. And then the fact that I watched an interview where the one in charge of the renewable energy in Ghana at the energy ministry was talking about the fact that currently Ghana is not, like as you were saying earlier on, Ghana is a sink, so we are not really emitting that much. My question is, as it stands now, maybe most African countries which have not really done much about their industrialization, the emission is quite low. So if we are not, maybe like there shouldn't be any emission tax, there shouldn't be some form of maybe charges for people who are emitting more. Should we wait to a point where people are now doing these things, or should we wait to a point where these things get out of hand? That's when we introduce some of these things.
Introducing the tax, the levies, you
Yes,
don't even want to introduce it in the first place because, first of all, as I said, we are a sink. So why pay the emission levy? Which emission are we paying for? And two, there are funds that are available for countries, especially those who are sinks and vulnerable countries. So countries that are poor, like developing countries, like least developing countries, that we can access to use to do anything we want to do, especially where we have mitigation plans at heart. So everything we do, we have it like at the end, we have to produce low carbon or no carbon. We can access such funds. There are so many funds that we have not accessed at all, and is available. So I don't see why we should be paying taxes when there are funds available for any action that we need to take towards climate change issues. Yes.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay,
So
thank you.
the next person is Abdul Mumim.
Okay, can we take like 2 more after Abdul and then we can close? Then you can send the rest to the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. Prof, that was such an insightful presentation. I really learned a lot. But my question is, how does climate change specifically affect girls and young women in Ghana in recent times? Thank you.
How it affects girls and young women in Ghana. One,
Yes.
I see anxiety, like psychological issues, because the way we are speaking about it, people are becoming anxious. They kind of scared of the future, which is actually true. It's in the right direction. So that's one, psychological and mental effects. And then two, the young people and of course, young girls, children are more vulnerable, as I explained earlier on. So obviously, when a climate disaster happens and people will have to run, you can't get children running as fast as a normal man is running or a normal woman is running. And even if they are not running, but they have to afford some kind of structure to adapt, like it's raining and you have to buy an umbrella. You expect a man or a woman, an adult, to be able to afford an umbrella than a child affording an umbrella, or in that scale, anyhow you put it. So children are more vulnerable. Of course, women or young girls are also vulnerable compared to men and adult women. I hope that is clear. I see so many hands up.
Yes, I know you
Yes,
have to
thank you.
One question that caught my attention on the screen is if Ghana is practicing mitigation and what are they doing? I remember we've been planting trees in the country, and a day declared in the year of like tree planting day. There are so many happening. Yeah, so yeah, plants, at least we are planting trees, we are promoting renewable energy sources like solar panel. Yeah, there are so many. Someone is asking if I could explain how bioenergy with carbon capture and storage fits into our broader climate change mitigation strategy. So this is to remove carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, because we relate the warming to carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. So if we can remove some carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, we believe that the warming level will come down. Yes, and if, of course, if you can scale the technology up, probably it will be helpful. So I leave it to you, the young minds, to come up with innovations on how to get these things done.
Pardon my intrusion. Sorry, but can I be the one to ask a question?
So ask.
Okay,
I think Terry called me.
Thank you very much. Please, you spoke of taxing, and so far, as to my knowledge, I know of the carbon market and its system of taxing, and I have a document from the Ghana Carbon Market Office, and clearly they are, according to their guidelines, they are supposed to implement the carbon markets or carbon taxing, not in the way that it was done, as you lamented on, but rather to tax companies. And so my question is, why aren't they doing exactly that? And instead of that, they are taxing citizens.
Yes, so that's tax was discussed widely and it didn't get implemented. So if they are taxing companies, fine, they will probably fight for themselves. But for me, in general, I don't see why Ghana or ordinary Ghanaians should be paying taxes directly or indirectly on emissions when we are a sink.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bro, I think the last question is coming from me.
Abdul.
Oh, please, I want to ask a question.
Isaac, please
He
go
has
on.
already spoken. Okay, so
And please go straight to your question.
Prof, how do we fight climate when the era we are now, we are very happy about? We always say we are in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And meanwhile, these industries coming up are the main cause of this climate change, the greenhouse effect. So how do we fight this when we are happy about it? Because once we are happy about it, it means no government is ready to fight it. So how do we?
Yes, so yeah, it's important. We cannot stop developing. So what is important is that we have to go through this development or technologies with low emission. So low carbon emission is the key here. So whatever we do, we have to do it with low carbon emission. For example, I said energy sector is the primary source of emission in the system. And so how can we use energy still for whatever we are doing, but it has to be efficient to provide low emission. Nuclear power is one area we can go into to give us good energy for industrialization, good energy for our technology, but then doesn't add to carbon dioxide emission or adds very low. So the low carbon energy or emission is what we are talking about. So we have to go into such technologies that will give less emission into the climate system. We cannot stop technology. We cannot stop developing. So we only have to do it with mitigation on mind. Is that cool?
That's cool, but bro, we know these countries, the advanced countries are the ones producing these things, and then
Yes.
it's what gives them income. So if it is what is giving them most of the income they are looking for, then it means they are not ready to go into a different form of production, since this is what gives them what they want.
Yeah, so the difficulty is that fossil fuel is cheaper than every other energy. Nuclear energy is expensive. Renewable energy, either through solar or wind or any of those things, are all expensive. So it's cheaper to use fossil fuel to produce whatever you want to produce. That's why people go into it. But then we keep advising, we keep advocating, we keep fighting that we have to stop fossil fuel as much as possible. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but we should know that doing that means adding greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. They know, we know, but it is happening.
Thank you, Prof.
All right,
So
thank you.
there was a lady, if it's burning.
Yes, please, it's me.
That would
Prof,
be
please,
my
I also
last
have a
one. I
question.
have to go,
No,
so.
Prof, I think we should
My question
take the questions through the link, so you answer them later.
Okay, but she's already up, so go ahead, Gift. Oh,
And please, my question is there any policy that involves dead animals producing carbon into the atmosphere?
I don't understand. A
Because
policy
dead
that does
animals, they
what?
also contribute to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Which animal?
Hello.
I didn't get it. Which
All
animal?
living organisms. Once I know, living organisms, when they die, they
Yes. So what is your question?
I think she's off. So
Okay.
Can I ask mine?
no, leave your question in the link.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. So tomorrow we're going to, the lecture will focus on adaptation. So make it a point to come
so
early
is
so
there
that, can you hear me? Tomorrow we'll focus on,
Yes, please, we can hear you.
adaptation. So make it a point to join early so that we can have time for the questions as well. So I'll have time for you tomorrow for questions. And on all that we did yesterday, today, and tomorrow, you can ask the questions that I've not asked. If I'm not able to answer them on your platform, I will answer them tomorrow when you ask them. Thank you very much. And I got to go.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Please, let's take notes of the following. Benedict, I think Benedict, please wait to be called before you attempt to answer a question, to ask a question. Don't ask when you are not called. If you do that the next time, I'll remove you from the meeting. And also, let's be reminded that there is another session tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Let's endeavor to join on time. Thank you and have a pleasant day.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.